Education opens doors for the gospel, bringing hope to dark places and sparking lasting change around the world. At Teach Beyond, we're reaching the nations through education.
This is Transformed and Transformational, a podcast from Teach Beyond. I'm Kian.
And I'm Heather. We're exploring how the gospel transforms us and overflows to impact classrooms, communities, and the world.
Let's jump into today's conversation. Today we have a returning guest with us, Paulo Jobim.
You know, Kian, it's not very often that we have someone coming back on the podcast. Of course, Brian joins us every last episode of the month. But besides that, it hasn't happened very often. So I'm really excited to be able to return to the conversation, the topic, the category of neuroscience that we started with Paulo all the way back on episode 70.
It is crazy considering that episode 70 was 4 years ago, and just thinking about all the things that have happened in the meantime.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's especially true if you see kids growing up. Like, to think that when Paulo came on last, my nephew was 1 and now he's almost 5, and there's another nephew and niece in the family. So in some ways, things are kind of the same 4 years later, but with kids, there's always something new.
So true. We'll have to ask Paulo what has changed in his life since our last conversation.
Yeah, that's good. The first time we talked with Paulo, we were talking about neuroscience and belief, seeing how the decision to follow Christ and the process of being transformed relates with Paulo's field of study, neuroscience. If you haven't heard that episode yet, I'd encourage you to go back, listen to episode 70. We'll link to that in the show notes so that you have some background on this concept.
Today we are looking at the neuroscience behind transformational education, including both theories and practical applications for teachers and parents.
Paulo Jobim lives with his family in the south of Brazil and focuses his time applying his PhD in neurobiology of memory in his writing, teaching, and creating resources related to neuroscience, theology, and education.
Let's go over to that conversation with Paulo now.
Welcome to the podcast, Paulo.
All right. Thank you for having me again. It's really good to be back.
Thanks, Paulo. We are so excited to have you. And you mentioned how it's good to be back because we had you on our podcast 4 years ago, and that is a long time. I'm sure a lot has changed in your life. So I'm curious, what's changed in your family? How's your life looking now after 4 years since you were last on?
Thanks, Kin. Yeah, a lot of things change. I think 4 years from now, but I think the most important thing that changed for us is our kids are growing,
Right.
because 4 years ago we have only one kid,
Mhm.
Pedro, 5 years now. At the time he had 1 year,
Mhm.
and then born the second one, Alice. Now she
Okay.
had 3 years old. I think me and my wife, we are still learning this parenthood. It has been really challenge. We have ups and downs, but what we can see now, they study in regular schools, public schools here in the city that we live, and it has been really hard to help them to track the right pathway.
Mm.
Teaching them principles, Christ-centric associations during their lifetime. So we feel really glad and joyful to do it, but we feel really challenged to do it. So I think it's a learning process, especially because I was take a look in some papers, and a lot of new discoveries about these neurons we have in hippocampus. It called mirror neurons. You're familiar with, right?
No, this is like you gotta teach us from the ground up.
Oh, yeah, in pedagogy, it's well known. This type of neurons, they are specialized in imitating behavior. So I was talking about a friend of mine yesterday about it, about how people who tries to imitate Christ use those neurons. He was saw in some podcast, and he was asking me if the person who was speaking was a neuroscientist, if I'm agree with his statements or not. And these neurons are really important, especially when you are developing our personality, especially during the childhood and until let's say, the late 50s. They are really engaged in learning processes. So kids with 3 years old uses a lot it. So me and my wife, we try to help them to have this emotional intelligent development. So how they deal with when they are frustrated. For instance, Pedro loves to play with Lego. Lego is
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
Yep.
You building blocks, and So he's get really frustrated sometimes because
Yeah.
it's complex. The Lego that he uses is the smallest one. Even for me, sometimes it's harder to follow the manual.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we help them with our words. We say, you should do it, you should not do it, calm down, relax. But many times our behavior are different than that. So
Mhm.
Mm,
it's like we are saying things, but you're not doing the things that we are saying. So I think this is what has been challenging us most,
mm,
because we need to be an example so they
mm,
can copy our behavior, and they absorb a lot of things.
mm,
So many
Mhm.
times we understand that we are not behave properly in relation to our kids. So no, stop to complain. We should stop to complain. Many times we here is interesting. I not go much further with that, but I think it's interesting. Here in Sant Antonio, we have kind of different. It's not official, but we have different rules in traffic. uh,
okay.
it's a traffic culture, I think, because here many people, I believe that many people don't have their license to drive because
Oh.
there is no fiscalization, there is no policy to cover these traffic issues. So it's more people do what they want, and for instance, people don't use the light to sign when they go to left or right. I mean, it's very rare that someone use that line.
Huh.
So they just suddenly turn, and I mean, this is different where the city that I used to live, were a big city. No, the traffic is jammed, but people use this sign so you can communicate
Uh-huh.
better. And here I get really angry with that. It makes me angry. Say, come on. Sometimes people stop in the
Uh-huh.
middle of the road. I just stop here. So it's very interesting. It's a mentality they have here. It's not a small city. We have almost 50,000 people living here, but the traffic is very, uh, I mean, very poor understood. I mean, people don't know the rules, and I have to control myself many times, you know.
Uh-huh.
And it's interesting. We are watching Star Wars. My son loves Star Wars, and there's an episode where Yoda is fighting against his angry. It's like the Yoda and like a dark cloud Yoda, like more aggressive and scary, but it represents he's angry.
Mhm.
So they are fighting together, and Yoda realized in the middle of the fight that as more his strength he put a lot of energy in fight, he understand that his anger gets stronger. So he realized in some way that he needs to calm down and accept that he is angry, and he feel angry towards people. And he said the final dialogue between this fight is, I accept you, but you're not controlling myself, I'm control you.
Mm.
So it's become like a mantra for me and Pedro, because we watch together. So every time I am angry in the traffic, he said to me, don't let your anger controls you, you
Uh-huh.
know.
Yeah.
And I talk to him, you know, talking one thing and doing is different.
Right,
So we are
right.
learning how to do it, you know.
I think that's a
It's very
very
good.
relatable experience for a lot of parents that, you start to realize the things that you actually do and how things come across and that mirroring learning, like you start to see that coming out of your own child and you realize, oh, okay, this is actually how I am. And so that's a very common experience you're having and a refining one as you're parenting to realize, okay, the Lord is at work on in my life too, as I am, trying to raise them well to know him. And um I love that the neuroscience piece came out just right in your update and your family update, because of course this is such a big part of your life, the way you see the world. And I love that you can give us that lens too, Paulo, because for those of us who don't wake up thinking about this, it's so interesting to understand a little bit more if we peel back the curtain or if we look underneath and inside to understand a little bit more about what is going on. And so last time we talked about neuroscience and belief, the process of faith and how the brain actually looks differently in that case. And today we're focusing specifically on neuroscience as it plays out in transformational education in an educational context. So I'm curious, as we're getting started, from your perspective, what is uniquely powerful about education as a context for transformation?
Yeah, this is a great question, by the way, because it's at least in Brazil and Latin America, I think in general, but in Brazil, I remember that a couple years ago there was a government slogan about how education will transform the reality in the country. So it's a slogan that reflects that the government will invest a lot of money, and they did. They opened a lot of universities and they invest in the schools and technology and so on. And this is good because this is actually changed their lives, the people lives, because they have more knowledge, so they could have better jobs, so they could escape from misery, and they could have a decent life, a decent house, and know and conditions to raise their kids, and this is good. But for a long time, I think people were looking education only in terms of let's give information for the students, let's give them knowledge to use to develop their professors, the professions, their skills, and so on. And I mean, not wrong about it. This is good, but there is more in education. For instance, there is a theory. Probably you hear about this one. It's the uh, transformative learning theory from Jack Misro, John Dewey. I think they use a lot of Paulo Freire as well and Jean Piaget. This is very interesting because this theory is to help people to become more critic in terms of thinking about reality, so not fall for any fake news, so to judge things based on a knowledge that they know that's trustable. And of course it involves some kind of self-detachment, so be less selfish, so human flourishing in general, so you became a better person, and this is good. You establish moral values, principles. This is a secular theory, but it's very good. But there is another theory that I think it's very important for us, another type of education, let's put that way, which is the transformational education that we are dealing daily in Teach Beyond. And of course, the difference is this is a Christ centered education. So it's different from the secular education. And it's interesting to me that when you talk about the power of education to transform lives, we see that God creates our brains and create processes in our brains, such as the neuroplasticity. It means that our neurons, that are the cells in our brain, we call neurons, has the possibility to change and hardware in the different shapes. So changing your worldview, your personality, your identity. So it's very life is made for us to have changes and be transformed along the road. So all these mechanisms, the neural mechanisms involved in education, both in informational education, the one that teach you how to have a lot of knowledge to be an engineer, a medical doctor, or something like that, or the transformative learning, which help you to become a better person, more altruist, less selfish, and make an impact in your community. And also the transformational education, the one it's based on Christ. This use those mechanisms we have in our brains, but only one of them, and I think this is what matters in transformational education, is the one that are connected to this spiritual reality, and we are spiritual beings. And I think science has a lot of interesting features that are showing that. For instance, just since you like some science information, I was reading a paper about people that die. You can see brain activity. It's a very, very common use, and they noticed when 6 people in this paper died during this event, and half of them, 3 of them, still have brain activity even after they die. So for 15 minutes after the medical doctors declare the death, because the heart stopped beating, the blood stop to flowing, and the cells in our body stop to working. Right, there's a lot of processing going on when people are dying. apoptosis, and other processes that are preparing your body to. But their brains, three of them, their brains were keeping working. And it's interesting because the area of the brain that was activated was one, the hippocampus, the one connected to the memories. So it's like they are, we can say that they are revisiting their lives and their memories for 15 minutes after dying. And another area is the temporal lobe. Temporal lobe is like in both sides, but in the sideway in your heads. And they have cells in temporal lobes, specialized cells called concept cells, which are neurons that are engaged to giving meaning to our experience. So every time I live something, these neurons correlate that new experience with my previous knowledge. So you see, it's like they are revisiting their lives, activating their memories, and giving meaning to those memories. But they already died. There is no experience anymore. So I think this is very interesting because the authors they are all atheists. So the conclusion was really discreet about it. They said that it might be happening that their life after death really exists, but not go further than that because it's not a scientific matter. But we as Christians and as a scientist, I think this is very interesting because I think the neuroscience is going further in this spiritual dimension, and this is why I think neuroscience is really well connected with transformational education. And I think one day we have more results, not reducing, of course, the spirituality and Christ to a brain activity, but to
Mm,
understand the effects in our brain when we
mhm.
live this spiritual reality.
Yeah, that's a really important point that we're not just trying to break things down to, well, this happens in your brain and that's it, but that there's a reflection of what we experience that also is happening in our brains, and that can help us make sense one way and the other with that.
I'm curious as you think about how thoughts are processed, how memories are formed, how that changes, how that might look different in the brain, in the way we process things, um, as we are being transformed in Christ. How as we're being having that spiritual dimension in our brains and our thoughts.
Yes, yes. No, this is a great question, King, because you see, there is a lot of theories about how we create our identity, our sense of our identity. But one of the most popular ones, I think one is very interesting, is memories are gradually creating our, we call, referential self. So you have the so-called autobiographical memories. Did you ever see that movie called Inside Out?
Yes.
It's an animation movie. It's very nice. I mean, because it shows that they call core new, memories. So the happiness was really trying to avoid sad memories in the core
Hmm.
memory because it's the memory that are connected to your identity. So we have the autobiographic memories that are memories that are shaping who you are, and we are what our experience lead us to be. We are a result of our experience. So these autobiographic memories could be two different types. They call episodic autobiographic memories, which is the one related to the memories that I'm part of it, like my wedding ceremony or a graduation ceremony or a birthday party, something that I'm on it. This type of memory are stronger because there is more emotional input on that. So emotion regulates how strong the memory is consolidated, and these memories are shaping my identity. But also another type of memory is called semantic memories. So autobiographic semantic memories is a memory that are related to knowledge, general knowledge, what I learned in classroom, in the biology, chemistry, so on. When somebody tell me about some place, so for instance, well, Japan is a nice place to visit. I saw Heather images from Japan. Uh, so she told me, yeah, it's a good place to go. I never been there, but I know that's good because according to her experience, she give me some knowledge about it, so I can use this knowledge also to build my own knowledge, and my identity is forming based on what not only what I do and live and experience, but what people say about me. So self-esteem is very related to that. So it's a social influence forming my identity, especially for teenagers. This is important. So with the time, these memories are forming the conceptual self. Is the my self-imaging, who I think I am, and my values, my beliefs, everything is there. So my actions will be based in this concept self. So you see, usually this happen in a uh, horizontal way, right? We live our lives and we have experience and we form our identity. But in Christ is different. It's a different identity because it's more vertical way. Because then I have a God that incarnates in a man, Jesus Christ, and I learn from him, not only with my personal experience, because he's living on me, so he can tell me to do things or not to do things. I have his voice in the back of my mind, so I understand what is bad, what is wrong. But also because I read the Bible, I go to the churches, so I learn theology in general. So all the semantic and episodic memories are forming who I am. And I think this is a very good way to understand how Christian identity is formed because we have this other transversal relation with God. It's not only our lives and our experience that shape us. I think we're going to talk about that in more details and talk about traumas and how this is connected to our identity. But this is a good way to see Christian identity as different in opposite from identity that made in a secular ways.
It is interesting to think about how the Bible is a story. There's a story versus like a list of like, hey, here's just a pamphlet with facts that you need to know. But instead, it's a story. It's a episodic kind of as you described, a story memory that you can interact with and changes who you are versus just raw facts that the Bible is sharing.
Exactly, exactly. It's even because when you are reading the Bible, yourself are being projected to the Bible histories. But what happened is the other way around as well. The Bible and the histories, the characters in the Bible, what Christ teaches is being projected to ourselves. So we have this uh, theologically we call the union with Christ doctrine, right? So it's like Christ living in me and I live in my life, but I can see reality through the eyes of Christ. And I think this is important because when you talk about conscience, because there is a theory about conscience that is very well accepted, and one of the best ones is called global workspace. It's like theory as a part of a memory system, a conscience as a part of memory system. In the way that conscience will be like a beak of light, a flashlight that shines the memories. So where my conscience is going is the memory that is being accessed and put in the stage for my brain interact with these memories. So I have my myself and my own conscience to understand my memories. So give meaning, give the emotions and all those things. But in Christ, I have a kind of eternal conscience that transcends my nature. So I can see through the love of Christ the same event, the same memory, but I have different meaning and different emotion connected. And this is the identity that is forming. I don't know if you got the point, but this conscience made a completely different identity.
Like kind of the different conscience you can use as you assess different situations. So that's kind of where you might see somebody like, hey, this seems hypocritical that you do this thing in this situation and this thing in this situation. But it's because you're using a different like conscience lens that you bring to different situations.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly the
interesting.
worldview. Yes, the worldview is about that. And it makes sense neurologically because you see, we can understand things from a transcendent God, a God that is there in the eternity and not reachable. But when God became a man and incarnate as a man to shows the way, we can create we call a referential self because we have the conceptual self, the social self, and the referential self is the one that I can relate it with. So God teaches things through Christ because I can use his referential self to guide my way and then looking things through the eyes of Christ instead me Paulo looking some memory some bad thing that happened to me. Christ is looking that, so it's completely different meaning I have through my life experience
Mm,
because the lens change, and I think this could be a very nice thing to explore
mm,
scientifically
mm,
speaking.
mm. Yeah. I love that. we have the idea of just it brings so much hope to think about how we can see things not just in this linear plane that is just, me living my life through my concept of self, but to see the bigger picture and have that meaning.
Hmm.
There's so much hope and light that comes through that way of thinking. So this is really interesting. And your visuals of, the memory on the stage is a really helpful visual, Paulo. Um, I'm thinking about the classroom or an educational setting and what this looks like as it's lived out in the classroom. How would you say this comes to life in an educational setting?
This is very important because usually, I'm glad you asked that, Heather, because usually when you talk, I'm doing it a lot. When you talk about neuroscience, you talk a lot about theories, right?
Right. Right.
So, okay, we have how brain works, and so a lot of knowledge, but there is no many practical applications for that knowledge because the school teachers they are not accessing this type of information,
Right.
academic information, and the academic people do not understand what it's like to be a teacher. They daily
Uh-huh.
fights,
Yeah.
so it's very good to try to. I like to try to connect this knowledge. This is, I think,
Mhm.
part of my ministry to
Mm.
bring some light based on knowledge and see how applicable it is in the real life. Because many of this knowledge, I mean, will be not work for classrooms, but some of them will be helpful for teachers, and you should evaluate which ones will be good and others will be not so good. But I think, in practical terms, this emotional connection between teachers and students is very important. This respectful, this kind of when students admire the teachers because there is something in the teacher that remind myself. So I like this thing in the teacher, but you can see that the teacher is still developing that and have morals and have principles, and this it's what emotional connection can brings, because you remember I was talking about Jesus as a referential self. This is a mind mechanisms. Everybody could become a referential self. My father, my teacher, everyone that I admire. But it means that when I have this sense of admiration, I can give credibility of what people are saying. So I see that is like me as a father. When I say things to my son and try to teach him what to do, what not to do, if I act like I'm doing, I'm not a hypocrite, and I doing things that I say that is good to do, I start to get this sense of credibility. And my son say, okay, this guy, my father, he's doing that. He's still living that truth. And this is, I think, for church is very important. So you talk about Christ, but you live like Christ as well. And in classroom, this is very important because this identification that the students have in teachers lead to credibility and what we call intellectual humility, or we can also call cognitive flexibility. Is how I see. I have my worldview, I have my perspective, I have my life and my knowledge, but this teacher, he's a nice person, and what he's saying to me might be useful to my life, so I can use this knowledge to build my identity, so as a referential self. So this emotional connection, it's, I mean, it's a must in classroom, because otherwise we'll be just, a person talk about subject that I don't like much. I not engage with that. So this in Brazil is a very problematic case now. The formal teaching, like you have to study biology, chemistry, geography, and so on. The students not see relation with their own interest in their lives with that. So this is make their evade the school and find another things that they found more interesting. So emotional connection, kind of discipleship, is important, and I think also giving tools to the school teachers to know their students. So create opportunity or mechanisms to understand what the student like, how is like his personality. We create some not long time ago we create some diagnosis to try to understand the way that students learn best, their learning preferences, their personalities, and their previous knowledge. So what they know already for you to build new and new information, but based on this previous knowledge. So I think these two things are quite important: emotional connection and knowing each other. So relationship, and I think neuroscience point that these are very important for education.
Let's take a short break for a story from the field.
Hi, I'm Melissa Lemke, and I serve in Budapest, Hungary. 4 years ago, the co-director of English camps in Hungary and I decided to start English camps in Hungary, and it had really been on our hearts to have an opportunity outside of the public school system to interact with our kids so that we could share the gospel with them in a way that we're not able to do when we're in a public school. Almost all of our campers come from the public schools that we work in, and we opened up the opportunity for student volunteers to any student who is over 18. And they don't have to be Christian, but they know that it is a Christian-based camp. They know that they're going to be interacting with Christians. Both of our boy student volunteers were very skeptical of Christianity at first, and they were so interested that all these Christians were coming to help out with camp that they were paying money to do it. They couldn't understand. And so they decided to show up to the devotionals every morning because they were curious what it was about. And one of them, the first year, just like sat in the back, listened. Maybe he sang the hymns, I don't really know. But then the second year, when we were doing a morning devotional and I had opened it up for anyone to pray for a camper they had had a conversation with, for something that they've been thinking about, if they wanted to pray for who was sharing their story that night. And he prayed out loud with the group. He would say that he's not a Christian, but every year now he's been willing to come to devotionals, to ask questions, participates every time. And we're really proud of him. We're really hopeful that he takes that step.
For our weekly spotlight, we are focusing on the Christian English School of Torino in Italy. If you want to learn more about opportunities to serve, visit the Teach Beyond Opportunity Board at teachbeyond.org/go or click on the link in the show notes.
And now back to our conversation with Paulo. I think these things, as a former teacher and working with a lot of teachers, these are principles that we learn and that we, any of us can imagine would be important in the classroom, right? Just like, it's important in life to form relationships and see the humans in front of us. But it's very interesting to know that that matters from a neuroscience perspective, that like in the brain and how the student experiences that, not just emotionally, but in their brains, is maybe you would say we're experiencing our emotion in our brain too, but that that is some validation for what we know conceptually must be a good idea, right? You're bringing some validity behind these, what might seem like common sense, or what might seem like, oh yeah, I've experienced that myself, so probably a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a lot of new research in education using a methodology they call NIRS. It stands for near infrared spectroscopy. It detects the red bloods now with transport oxygen, and you can see which area of the brain has been engaged when you are learning something. It's a portable device, so you can take it everywhere. You have this helmet, which is not big. It's comfortable to use, and for instance, they are showing that there's kind of a synchronization between school teachers' brains when they are teaching, or when they are interacting with the students, and students' brain.
Interesting.
So you see, this is a little bit in the border of knowledge now, but it seems that the brains, when you have relationship with someone, not only romantic relationship, but relationship of admiration, of friendship, you have a kind of synchronized activity in the cortex. So it's like you create a brain signature of interaction, and this technique is showing that. I think this is very interesting because
Yeah.
people already know that it's important to have communication and live in community, but science and neuroscience especially are showing the effects on the brain, not reducing everything to
Yeah.
brain activity, but showing what happened in the brain of people that are being transformed.
Yeah.
I think this is very nice. We
Yeah.
can use it as a tool.
That is so interesting to hear about how you see the brain, how the brain interacts with others, with those around them. And you kind of teased this a little bit before that we were going to reference this, but the impact of trauma and how trauma might change people's brain, alter the way they engage and have memories formed and interact, especially maybe in an education setting, how a teacher might interact with somebody who's gone through trauma, how they interact with kids or just students in general. And that.
Perfect. That this is an awesome question because this is important because sometimes students behave in different ways and teachers don't know why. But some the traumas are really important thing to address in classrooms. You see, I was reading another publication I like to talk about because I always read in articles. So one article I think is from Harvard people. They said that the traumas can go on through generations, to at least 3 generations by they call epigenetic mechanisms. So it's like the way of being, because trauma is part of our identity, right? Because it's a very strong memory, and you create behaviors, and you have a lot of triggers that are related to that trauma. So this change the way your brain operates. I think this particular paper are showing about the effects of resilience. So people has been traumatized, is like creating a signature in the brain, the way that the brain process reality and the way the brain interact with people and reality around the person, and how resilience could try to put the brain together again and help to deal with traumas. But it's important to know about it that memory has different components. So you have at least 3 different components. You have the context, the information you acquire by your what you hear, what you see, what you smell, your sense organs, how you acquire those information, which is stored in hippocampus mainly. But you have the emotion that is connected to the feelings. So usually emotions that are both for good or for bad, but strong emotions make strong memories. And you have the meaning of that experience. Remember that concept cells I spoke earlier? So that concept cells are mainly giving the meaning of your experience. So connecting your new experience to your mental schema, to your life experience, how it makes sense to you as a person. And this is our, and we still have, because the context and the emotion is like a first order processing. So you just feel it like
Hmm. It's
intuitively,
natural.
instinctively. It's
Yeah.
natural. So you feel and you see as you live. So then in the thinking, the reasoning, and the meaning became as a second order processing. And you still have, they call metacognition. It's thinking
Hmm.
about thinking.
Yeah.
It's like a third order. So we have more or less 3 orders. So it's interesting because God creates this our brain, and the way the brain store memory in the way that we can be transformed. Because you see, when you're looking against for traumas, people that suffering uh, bad abuse during childhood in the schools, so therapeutically we can go there. Biblical counseling do it a lot, and secular therapies do it a lot. So we can access that memory, that traumatic memory, and you can have the emotional arousal from that experience, and you have the meaning. You cannot change never the context, because the context is unchangeable. It's what you live. You lost the details during the time, but it's important to keep the information. But the meaning and the emotion can be changed. And it's interesting because when you suffer the trauma, when you consolidate that memory, the consolidation as a process that the memory gets stored, you have the emotional aspect giving the meaning of the experience. I don't know if you got it, but our first life experience will be more guides by what we feel than the meaning it has. So the feeling creates the meaning. But when you reactivate that memory, we call this reconsolidation, is a second process, different than consolidation, biologically, physiologically different. It's not the emotion that leads to the meaning, it's the meaning that leads to the emotion. And this is interesting because therapeutically we can change the meaning. You can have, as King said, another conscience, another lens to look at the same fact, not mine, but from Christ, because I have his as referential self, and I have his ways, his love to look at the same memory. And you can change when you do it. You can change the emotion that the memory brings to you. and you can reformulate based on that the meaning, what that represent to you. And I was reading in the church in the service in last Sunday about Romans 8, chapter 8, verse 28. And I was looking in the Greek, the word good, the translation, it's agaton is the word in Greek that Paul's write. And agaton doesn't mean necessarily that things are good or bad. It's different. It means good in the moral sense. Good is not good and evil as we judge, but is good is something that make you more connected to Christ, has more values like Christ. So this could be used to change, this kind of information might be used to change the meaning of that bad experience. And if you change the meaning, if you understand that this is became part of who you are, and you look at that with love of Christ, you change the way you feel that same memory. So you can forgive yourself, you can forgive others. I mean, this is therapeutically, when you talk about traumas, this is very important. And I think traumas is something that this emotional intelligence, I think people used to call it, is something that should be more connected to the teaching methodologies, because it's something that is good for kids, for students, and for the human flourishing and for the maturity in Christ.
Paulo, so as we are talking about neuroscience so much and just the ways that the brain causes us to think about things and reflect on things and make decisions, I feel like some people could think, oh, we're all just kind of machines that we have no choice but to do this, to think about things this way. And so, how do you address that concern when people are like, you're reducing us to just chemical reactions? We don't have any control over how we engage with things, and that kind of a reaction to this whole topic of neuroscience and our brain and how we make decisions and interact with our world.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. I think that there's something that God loves most, which is the free we have to do our will. So I think I believe in free will, but I believe we can make choices, we can choose things and judge things based on our nature. So let's say I hate's a bad word, but okay, there's a flavor. I tried in Mexico. There's a ice cream with spicy and I sweet it. I don't like it, you know. But this is part of my nature. So every time I go to some place to eat some ice cream, if that flavor will be there, naturally I don't like it. I will not choose that. So you see, you have a spectrum of choices based off your nature, and I think we are limited to that spectrum, biologically speaking, because my nature define what I like and what I not like. I think Christ releases us, is my like make us free from that nature. So it look like a paradox, but we can choose things that we are naturally not choose to do. So we are free to forgive. Biologically, it's very interesting. There is a paper, another paper that shows that when you have a gratitude, when you feel and experience gratitude in our brain, is like a neural signature. There's a neural pattern of activation that is completely in opposite when we feel pride. When you feel pride of something, the mechanisms are they are like excluded one each other. So or I feel pride or I feel grateful. I can feel both at the same time. So I think we have a very little possibility for choose based on our natural sins. The Homo sapiens is limited to the choices because we have our nature. But when you transcend that nature, we are free to choose things that we are naturally not choose. Could be an ice cream flavor, could be forgive, could be accept. You know, this is why I think as a new creature, spiritually speaking, because you can do things and do these things, we live a different reality, the kingdom of God, which is transcendent, right? So you see things because you have a different lens. I think neurologically it's very easy to show that. And together with that, we can show that we have free to do it, but only in Christ, because it's a spiritual thing, it's not a natural thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that you have been saying along, like, we're not reducing our faith to just what happens in our brain. Likewise, we're not reducing what happens in the classroom to just, these uh, transmitting signals between people. There's actual relationship and there's real learning, but we know that's also stored in the brain. So it's kind of substantiating what we know is happening, not reducing it down to something that is not human or personal. And so, yeah, I appreciate that perspective. You alluded to this earlier, Paolo, that a lot of these are big ideas. They seem theoretical. And so just continuing to bring this into the practical as we're wrapping up our time, if a teacher or even a parent is wanting to think about like one next step to implement some of what we've been talking about today, to think about how they can incorporate these findings and the theories. If you're the bridge between the theories and, the classroom, what would be your suggestion for where they could start today?
Well, it might be introduce novelty in classroom is a great tool to engage students, not only because it activates their brains and their attention will be focusing. Because you see, there is a theory it called the free energy principle. It's a very well established theory in neuroscience from a physics point of view. It seems that our brain is always make predictions of reality, so we can see the reality from inside out. So we make predictions and you see those predictions happening. And as more as our we predict is connected to the reality, the prediction is a good prediction. So it happens exactly what I think will happen. My brain start thinking in terms of activity. There is nothing new to be learned. So the brain's kind of accommodated. So if the classes are always the same, the students are making predictions and they are accepting those predictions, they are making right, the predictions is very well accurate, it means that their brain are not engaged in the
Hmm.
in the student process. So novelty will be something that will make the prediction error. So okay, these predictions, I
Right.
thought that the teacher will be like that, but he's different, and
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that because it triggers a reconsolidation process. Is especially when you are dealing with people that were traumatized, it's important to reactivate memories and to change that memories. So
Mm,
reconsolidation is a must in this process, and
hmm.
novelty is what triggers reconsolidation.
Interesting.
So yeah, changing the dynamics of classes is very important, very interesting to do, and change the subject and talk about something that people are not expecting. This also bring the attention back because you remember the brain is programmed to make predictions, and to do the predictions the brain needs to go back to your past to take memories of your life experience and
Yeah.
say, okay, I live something similar than that, so I believe
Yeah.
that this memory might be happening in the future. So this is a
Yeah.
prediction, right? Who does this movement is the conscience as a spotlight. So I can be sitting here talking to you, but I can thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch, let's say.
Yeah.
So I'm here speaking and cognitive engaging, but my conscience is not here anymore. With this has happened a lot in classrooms. You
Yeah.
can see as a teacher, you see that the kids, and this is good. Another paper, just to is very interesting. This one, it's a very new one. It's from this year. They are studying students that were diagnosed with this deficit of attention. So they are seeing by electroencephalogram that they do what we call daydreaming. Daydreaming
Uh-huh.
is like when you are there, but you are thinking something else. Your
Right.
conscience is not there. We call it as well mind wandering. It's like
Uh-huh.
your mind is. This is and what happens in the brain is this brings low brain waves.
Uh-huh.
Low brain waves is like beta frequencies when you
Okay.
are sleeping.
Uh-huh.
The random eye movement, the deep sleep,
Yeah.
your brain is producing beta waves. So it's like you're dreaming. And you can have the same wave pattern when you are wake up.
Uh-huh.
So, and people that has this attention disorder, they are showing that happen a lot of times. So novelty is something that help to bring the attention and to increase these wavelengths in the brain. I mean, mind wandering is a good thing, to imagining things. And you see, imagination is very important in classroom as well, because people say that if you imagine things it not became a memory. But some research are showing that they are wrong. I mean, imagining memories. So if I imagine be like Christ, I say, let's say I pass through a bad experience in traffic and I get angry with some driver and I not forgive him. No, but I can imagine differently. I can imagine that I'm like Christ and I pass through a different situation, a trauma or a bad situation in traffic, and I say, and I imagine that I'm like Christ and I can forgive him. I can say, okay, my friend, that's not bad. It happened. This imagination of myself be something different than myself. It forms a memory. It could be an episodic memory that are connecting to my identity. So you see, imagine and be more like Christ. Make me be more like Christ, because imagination is the way that. This is very interesting. I mean, this paper is an old one. They are studying spiritists, people who believe that in another lives. So they put these guys in the scanning, so to see their brain activity, and they when they are regretting to a different life. So I imagine to be a king or a queen for some place in the past. They are accessing their hippocampus. So the researchers say, okay, if they are accessing their hippocampus, it means that they have the memory, they live that experience. But actually, nowadays, we know that word only imagination. So it's very interesting how imagination is powerful in education.
Again, these reminders of things that might seem like common sense, like trying new things in the classroom and bringing in creativity, creating space for imagination, but realizing that there's actually a lot more happening there, that there's good reason for that beyond just it makes things fun and it changes things up in the classroom, but also that that's actually cutting into uh the what might be boredom or distraction in the classroom, and that's helping create new memory, helping with reconsolidation, all these different pieces. So I'm putting all these things together and thinking about the things that I might do in a classroom that actually have a lot more meaning beneath them. So thank you so much, Paulo, for shedding some light on this. I'm sure there's a lot deeper we could go in a lot of these areas, and so we really appreciate you just giving us a glimpse into how we can think about this in terms of not just the educational process, but also how the Lord is at work in that, and how we can understand our faith in the classroom and putting all of these together.
All right, thank you, Heather. I published a book last year, and I think this book is at the top of my knowledge. Is the only book we have now that connect neuroscience with Christian learning. I mean, there's a lot of neuroscience related to learning, but this spiritual gain dimension is something rare to see. So I think this book is where I try to put all the neuroscience knowledge applying for classrooms in more, I would say, there is not much practical guidance, but it's more a theoretical way. But based on this book, I create these courses for school teachers. So I think this material is specifically from this subject that we are talking about. How
Yeah.
educate our kids and the students in the way that they learn how Christ is and how to copy
Right.
Christ in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. We will link to the book and the resources you're talking about, Paulo, in our show notes. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure. I mean, really good to talk about it. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. I mean,
Absolutely.
Paulo, before we let you go, we have one question we like to ask all our guests, and that's what's one thing that's changing your life right now. So this can be something really big, something small. Kind of, you're free to take it where you'd like to go. So I'll go first, and then Heather, and then we'd love to hear what's changing your life. So what's changing my life is I just got back. We had a little bit of a family vacation, and so that was just a really good, energizing kind of time, just away from work, being together. So it was great. So yeah, that's been changing my life recently.
Now, they say that families on vacation is just parenting in a different place. Did you feel that?
Oh yes.
Okay.
For sure. For sure. It's being tired in a different place too. So yes,
Yes.
it was very much that, but the kids
Being
enjoyed it. So
tired.
it's fun.
oh, this is good.
That's great.
Where
Good.
did you go?
We
in
went
the
to
case.
Florida, and we actually got to go to Legoland, which was really,
Oh, that's
really
great.
fun.
Oh, Legoland! My son will love it. How it was?
There
I
you
mean,
go.
It was great. It was great. There's roller coasters, rides, all kinds of fun stuff. So, yes, my kids are very into Ninjago right now. So that was a fun
Okay.
thing to go enjoy.
oh,
There you
good,
go. I feel
good.
like your sons would be friends, so we'll
Yes,
work
I
on
think so.
that. Well, my what's changing my life lately is very small, but maybe there's something neuroscientific below this, Paolo, so you can have a field day
Hmm.
with that. But I found out about a different way to get to my post office that avoids like the main traffic in my little neighborhood. So just having a new route to my post office makes it a lot like less of a big thing to go when I need to drop off some packages or something. It's like, oh, it's not that hard to get there anymore because now I know the shortcut. So that's
Oh,
been
great.
changing my life lately on a very small level.
Oh, this is great.
What about you, Paolo? What's been changing your life lately?
I've been in Mexico last year, participating in a conference called Con tu Consejo. It's a biblical counseling conference, but I have no idea when they invite me. I have five talks in those conference about this neuroscience, and I didn't know about the main subject of the conference when I were there.
Okay.
Uh, but I realized that there's a lot of nice academic work with biblical counseling in neuroscience.
Huh.
So I just read this book from Jeremy Pierre, as is Spanish. So I'm learning Spanish. You see,
There you go.
it's a very good book, very good because it connects the theology of biblical counseling. Is La dinámica del corazón, la vida cotidiana. Is
Great.
the dynamic of the heart. I think might be in English. It's really good, and because of that, I think I'm start to studying Spanish more deeper. I mean, I'm able to talk Spanish because it's very similar to Portuguese. I've been in Uruguay many times, and I always said to them, next time I'll be teaching because usually I teach in English there, and
Okay.
it's a shame, right? Because we are all Latin, so we should talk Spanish. And always I said, no, next time I'll be speaking Spanish. And I never, since 2023, I never learned. So now I decided, I say, I go go deep in Spanish and I learn it. And this experience in Mexico, it's helping me a lot. I'm reading a lot of Spanish, watching videos, and listen music. So Spanish is it's very good language. So a new language for me. It's what is going on right now.
Well, the thing is that you're not just learning Spanish to have a simple conversation. You're learning Spanish to explain neuroscience and theology, which is, very deep in any other language. So it's deep in my own
Yeah.
language. So it's great, a great challenge to be embracing. But I love how you're doing that for the sake of being able to teach it and connect with other people within the region and to be able to serve a broader audience. I hear that in all the work that you're doing, Paolo, that the desire is to resource the church, to resource educators, to be able to provide things that are going to help other people experience this transformation that you've experienced as well. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today and for being with us and for all these resources.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really good.
It was so interesting to hear these theoretical principles behind some, I don't know, basic classroom ideas and practices. And personally, I'm taking away the importance of those novel surprise elements in learning environments, like when we use an activity or even just an example of something like from a movie or another outside concept that the students might not be expecting.
I did love in our conversation. He kept bringing in different movies and things people could engage with
Yeah.
in a very fun way. And I think it's always fascinating to hear the science behind something we might already have experience and just to realize that it is a real thing and there is a really good explanation for what's happening there.
Yeah.
Paulo, Heather, and I serve with Teach Beyond, a mission organization reaching the nations through education.
Want to learn more and get involved? Visit teachbeyond.org or follow us on social media.
To help more people find the podcast and hear about Teach Beyond, we'd love it if you would leave a rating or review and share the show with a friend. Be sure you're subscribed or following the show on the platform where you listen so you never miss an episode.
And as always, you can reach us at podcast@teachbeyond.org. We'll see you next week.